Hey, how's it going? Garuda here. The picture that you're looking at right now is a picture of my farm in Hawaii, my organic farm on the Big Island. And I've been farming there for just almost 39 years. And this farm was hit by the volcano smoke and acid, and killed all my vegetables, and many of my trees have died or were affected by it negatively. And if you look up on the ridge here, they're going to go up with the drone, and you can actually see this black part on top of the ridge up there. This is called Leilani Estates. It's a huge subdivision, and there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes that were destroyed there. Now it's stopped flowing just recently, and this lava now, you can see all the black stuff was lava that was flowing, like I mentioned many times before, at 30,000 gallons a second. Lava was flowing out of here in a huge lake that was like a half a mile wide and flowing quite for 30 miles an hour. This was just right there. So we were like, we could see this happening before it was shooting up in the air. So we started these talks, Life After Lava, because we knew that many people in our area and many people all over the world are experiencing different kinds of problems and different kinds of losses. So I was trying to put a spiritual side to this problem so people could actually solve this problem at its very root, which is caused by this lost relationship they have with the Supreme. So that's been my motivation. So just want to give you a shot of this. You can see a little bit more about what's going on over here. So thank you. If you tuned in last time, we talked about some of the qualities of God. Before we get started on that, I would like to pay my respectful respects and my appreciation and thanks to my spiritual teacher, Siddha Swarupananda, Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, who has taught me, although very slow student and not very smart, but he has continued to teach me and tell me about God, and I appreciate that very much. So last week we were speaking, which is a really wonderful thing. It's very rare that people have actual information about God's qualities. In other words, God is the supreme person. We're all persons. We're all the children of God. So just like in a family situation, like I had a mother and a father like everybody, and I had a lot of the qualities of my mother and a lot of qualities of my father too, and this is normal. So a child inherits certain qualities from his parents. So the Supreme Lord is the source of all qualities. So we read about, 20 or something there in this particular book, the Nectar Devotion by Rupa Goswami, and translated and commented upon by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There's 64 mentioned. So after the 64 mentioned, that gives an actual story, a description when the Supreme Lord was present on the planet 5,000 years ago, of this quality in a story, how it was, how it was seen in him in this particular event. So any person who is conscious of his friend's beneficent activities and never forgets his service is called grateful. So grateful was one of the qualities that God has in full. So any person who doesn't forget what someone does for them, a person is considered to be grateful. This is a very attractive quality. And the fact that God has it in full is a very reassuring and wonderful thing to hear, because everybody, well, I don't know about everybody, but I know for myself, I always have this feeling, not always, but will people remember what I did for them? Or I think it's a natural thing to want to be someone to be grateful, and when you are grateful towards others for what they've done for you, it also makes you feel good just feeling grateful that they've been great. In other words, the grateful thing is a wonderful thing. So God has it in full. So it goes on to say that in the Mahabharata, which is a Vedic scripture, Krishna says, quote, "When I was away from Drupadi, she cried with the words, 'Hey, Govinda.' This call for me has put me in her debt, and that indebtedness is gradually increasing in my heart." So Krishna is saying here that because Drupadi, when they were separated, she was like an aunt, Krishna's aunt. She called out, "Hey," in translating English means "oh," like "oh, Govinda." So Govinda is another name for God. God has innumerable names describing all of his different qualities and attributes. So she called out to him. She was missing him. She was feeling separation from him. So she called out, "Hey, Govinda, oh, Govinda." So Krishna's saying that, of course, God hears everything, and he heard her. He knew her heart, that she was yearning for him. She was feeling she wanted to be with him. She felt separation, so she called out to him. And he's saying here that this indebted me to her. In other words, this is really far out, that God is so attracted to love that if someone who loves him calls out his name once, he becomes indebted. And not just indebted, but he's saying that at every moment, this indebtedness, this feeling in my heart that I'm appreciative and grateful for this is growing. This is cool. This is extremely cool. This is what everyone's looking for. This is why the spiritual world, our relationship with God, is so fulfilling. And it's actually what every person is looking for in others, situations, where they live, what they do. People are always trying to attain to this. But of course, in the material world, it always comes up short in one way or another. Even if a person is convinced that he's in the right situation, at some point, that situation will change. That's just the way it is in the material world, right? I mean, things change. It just seemed like yesterday, I was working as a young man, Now, I'm struggling just to be able to do a little bit of work, And that's not because I want it to be that way. It's because my body, in other words, changed. The material world, if there's one word to describe the material world, it's change. It's constantly changing. Now, this does not make a person feel safe. People are afraid of this, so afraid of it that they don't even want to talk about it. They don't even want to see it for what it is. They just try to, put it off, or don't try to actually deal with what's going on here. This is a real issue that people need to face, that if they actually want to be happy, they have to come to the realization that certain things aren't going to work. Even if it works in the short run, it's not going to work in the long run. So here, we're talking about actual love. The Supreme Lord loves all of his children, and those children who love him relate to him like Drupadi does. She's crying out to him. So he's saying here that my indebtedness is gradually increasing in my heart. Now, we're just talking about love here. The Supreme Lord has love for all of us. And those who reciprocate that love, then this creates a relationship. This is what spiritual life means. It has nothing to do with organizations or with some kind of a rituals, although this can be helpful in some ways, in some situations. It can also be harmful in some situations, depending on who the people are, what the rituals are. But the point being is that we're talking about love here. We're talking about real relationships. More real than the relationships exist in this world because they're eternal. Not that these relationships here aren't real, they are real. And they can continue if the relationship is based on our relationship with God. Just like right here, I hope that people are listening to this, at least one person, then it has value for me. But then I'm communicating to somebody about God. By doing this, this means that whoever that person is out there is listening, then we have a relationship. We've developed a relationship. I'm making an effort to relate to you, and develop a relationship. And that relationship is based on our mutual relationship with the Supreme Lord. So this type of relationship is eternal. In other words, each and every one of us is also eternal, just like the Supreme Lord is. And each and every one of us has a right, an inheritance to reside with the Supreme Lord. All that's necessary is to develop feelings, attraction in one's heart, to actually start to feel closeness, to feel love. Once these feelings become stirred in one's heart, then one becomes attracted to God. This is the foundation. He starts to believing in him. Talking about his qualities, start believing. This is the foundation of love. So if two people or many people have different relationships that are based on this relationship with God and each other, then this continues. This is not temporary. So Krishna goes on to say, this statement by Krishna gives evidence of how one can please the Supreme Lord simply by addressing him, Hey Krishna, Hey Govinda. So, people sometimes, unfortunately, people don't understand that God's a person. They think that these appearances of the Supreme Lord, some people think, very unfortunately, that these appearances come in some form, but this form is not really the Supreme Lord. That the Supreme Lord is just energy, and this energy manifests itself as a form, and this form comes to this world and does certain things and leaves, and then is not a person after that. This is not a fact. The Supreme Lord personally, in his transcendental, eternal form, appears and engages in eternal relationships. Just because it's in the material world, which is a temporary place, these activities, because they're based on relating and loving God and serving God, they're eternal. So the Supreme Lord is appearing, and here it is saying that the Supreme Lord becomes very pleased, just like he did with Draupadi, so much pleased that this pleasure that he has for this person and them calling out to him is increasing. It's an indebtedness that never goes away. It's eternally experienced by the Supreme Lord, this indebtedness. In other words, sometimes people try to paint a picture of God as being very not appreciative or not being concerned. This is not true. The truth is that he's the most concerned. He's supremely concerned about every one of his children. And everything that he does and allows to happen to us in one way or another, may be difficult for people to see this sometimes, is meant to help them come closer to him, or at least remove certain barriers or whatever it is, ultimately with the goal of that person becoming closer. I mean, this is incredibly wonderful. When you talk about good news, I mean, this is it. The Supreme Lord loves us unconditionally. He appears in the world personally. And we have so much information in these appearances. We're hearing about an actual event where a person who loved him was calling out to him when he was absent from that person. She was feeling separation. So she's calling out, oh, Krishna, oh, Govinda, oh, my Lord. And it's saying that Krishna becomes pleased by this. Pleased. I mean, sometimes people talk about how to please God. It's not complicated. The Supreme Lord is a supreme giver of protection. In other words, this is one of his attributes or functions, and he enjoys protecting, just like a father or a mother enjoys protecting their children. So when a person calls out for help, whether it be a feeling of emptiness or a feeling of wanting to be closer or wanting to relate to him, he responds. He's responding here. This is, it mentions in Krishna's heart. In other words, we're talking about love here. We're talking about the most attractive things. This is wonderful. So it goes on to say, the Maha Mantra. Maha means great, and Mantra means God's names. So, in all state, anyway, I won't get into that, but this Maha Mantra is a eternal combination of God's names, which are non-different from God. This Maha Mantra, the 16 words, is coming from the spiritual world. It's not a material manufactured thing. It's not made by any person or any place, but it's existed eternally. And it goes like this: Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Is also, so this Maha Mantra is also simply an address to the Lord and His energy. So this is not an Indian thing. This is not a Hindu thing when you get right down to it. You can say there's a connection between the Supreme Lord appearing in India 5,000 years ago, yes. And you can say that people who are what you would call Hindus, they worship Krishna, many of them, yes. But it's so simple. That's all there, fine. But that's not what this is about. This is about relating directly to God. Like it says here, it's simply an address to the Lord. There's these names of God, when someone repeats them, he's addressing to God. He's saying, "Oh my Lord, oh energy of the Lord, I need you. I need happiness. I need spiritual satisfaction. Please give me shelter." We're talking about a relationship here. All this other stuff that may come to people's minds, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Supreme Person and ourselves, individually, you, me as an individual, relating to God. This is it. That's what we're talking about here. Anything else you might be thinking of, you can think about whatever you want to, but it's nothing to do with what I'm teaching you, trying to teach you. And it's nothing to do with what I was taught by my guru. I was taught that I can love God if I want to. I must just simply take my need for love and take my consciousness and put it onto God. And gradually, the barriers that I've created in this relationship will be removed. And I found this to be true. As little as progress I may have made, I certainly have made some progress. It's real. There's no reason to bring this up if it's not real. What's the point? I'm not selling anything. I'm not looking to get anyone to do anything for me. I'm simply trying to pass on what I've received. Why? Because I'm indebted. This information and this reality, when it's given to somebody out of love, I'm indebted now. And the only way to try, you can never fully pay back that debt, because it's so valuable, there's no possibility of a person like myself paying that back. It's because it's unlimitedly valuable. But if a person makes an effort, how small it might be, then this makes it so a person can continue to receive this love. Because if a person just takes and doesn't give, then this means that a person's not seeing it as being valuable. If it's valuable, this means that you want to tell somebody. How many times in your life have you seen whatever it might be, maybe it's some food or a movie or a song, you just can't wait for your friends to hear it, right? I used to really, when I was a kid, started when I was, 7 years old, I really was into music. The rock and roll music on the radio back in the late 50s, and early 60s, and then kept going into the 60s. And when I heard a song, it was because these songs would come on the radio, be a new one. You go, "Why did you hear that song?" No, you gotta hear it, man. I remember we got a Beatles album one time, and it was we never heard of it. It was called Magical Mystery Tour, and I had it on a cassette tape, not a cassette tape, but a 8-track, a 4-track. Those tapes were about this big, almost that thick, So you go to the store and you buy it and you go, "Oh my God, I got the Magical Mystery Tour. Never heard it before." And then you take it and you put it in your car, and then we're all sitting in the car. We won't go into any details after that, what we're doing. But we're listening to it, And it was like, I'm just going, God, can you believe this? And then everyone's like, this is so cool. And you're just giving this song. Of course, after a while, it's like, okay, you got another album, I've heard that one already. But anyway, the point is that there's an excitement there in giving, right? This excitement is giving because you know what you've been given has value. You're thinking other people will like this. It's cool, It's neat. It's fun. That's what we're talking about here. That's the experience. So anyone who constantly engages in addressing the Lord and his energy, we can imagine how much the Supreme Lord is obliged. I mean, it's hard to imagine how obliged the Supreme Lord. Obliged means that the Supreme Lord cares about that. He cares about all of his children, but he particularly cares about those who care about him. I mean, he's a person. We're created in his image. You may care about this person over here, and maybe you go give them something and help them, but the person has no interest in you. That's going to be a different relationship than people who actually care about you, that you can relate to, and they have love for you. The relationship's going to be deeper, stronger. It's just natural. This doesn't take away from God's the fact that he loves everyone equally. It just means that he gives more energy and is more interested and has more fun with those who care about him. It's not really that hard to grasp. So we're talking about the Supreme Lord being obliged to one who relates to him. He becomes very obliged. So it goes on to say that it is impossible for the Lord to ever forget such a devotee. I mean, a lot of times people talk about wanting to see God or to be able to know more about God, but understand that if a God never forgets you, he's always remembering you because he's obliged to you, because you're always remembering him. This is the ultimate in spiritual life. This is the beyond all rituals or these different paths that may help a person ultimately weave their way back and forth and maybe come to a point where this at some point may be revealed to them. This is at the top. We're talking about relating to God directly, heart to heart. And the Supreme Lord becomes touched by this, attracted. God is the most attractive person. Krishna doesn't mean some kind of other language. It means all attractive. God is all attractive. So God, the most attractive, becomes attracted to love. God loves love. He loves to be loved. He loves to love. Someone loves him, he becomes attracted to the point where he doesn't forget that person. This is incredible. This is beautiful. This solves every problem that is imaginable. And it solves all the emptiness and all the things in this world which are negative. Everything is solved by this. So it goes on to say here that it is clearly stated in this verse that anyone, it doesn't matter if you're educated, it doesn't matter if you're not educated, it doesn't matter if you're of a particular faith or religion. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in God. It doesn't matter what your situation is, whether you're a man or a woman or a child or old or young. All of this stuff has nothing to do with our relationship with God. Nothing. Anyone who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. They have no real understanding. They have no realization. Self-realization means that one knows himself. In other words, I am spiritual. I am a spiritual being. I'm eternal. And self-realization means also that one understands and knows the supreme self, God. This is what spiritual life is at the highest point. And it's so much easier if a person understands this, at whatever point they understand, so they can begin to engage in this directly. No, sometimes people can't do this because the way they're, who knows, whatever, they're caught up in their customs or they're relating to this more. But this is, in this, that's fine. That's what they're going to do. I'm not putting them down. I'm simply saying that a person can directly begin to relate to God. And many of these rituals or customs that people do in their prayers, they are relating to God. You know, I'm not saying that's not true. They are. But here is describing how to relate to God in a very intimate, loving way. Or at least it's telling the stories of those who are doing this. So that's how we learn, is by hearing. So it goes just a little bit left here in this part here. It says, it is clearly stated in this verse that anyone who addresses the Lord immediately attracts the attention of the Lord, who always remains obliged to him. So spiritual life is such a wonderful thing. You can practice it in the privacy of your own heart and mind. It's so wonderful. You don't need anything other than the desire, and even if that's very weak, even if it's just the smallest desire to want to become happy, to want to overcome some obstacles or some heartbreak or some problem. This world's full of, or some tragedy of losing a family member, or maybe you're attracted to certain political things or ideals and your group or your ideas don't get used or whatever it is, or you're frustrated because so many people are frustrated. I know it's not everyone, but so many people I meet, when I meet people who are in their 20s and 30s and even 40s, the first thing not the first thing, but it always comes up, do you have any do you owe any money to for your college tuition to the government? I mean, it's like, I wasn't even aware of this at one point in my life, and then, it's in the trillions of dollars how much the government is. You want to screw things up. So let's talk about this for 1 minute. Get the government to do it, So they're going to start loaning money out, George Bush, the second Bush, the son of the other president, George Bush, he's the one that came up with this idea, right? Let's give them money. It sounds good. I mean, it was a good idea. Let's help educate people. But then, of course, what happened was all this money's flowing in, then it starts going through, the interest, and then, of course, colleges and tuitions just kept going up and up and up, and they started building better buildings and better facilities to attract more people, and now you got all these people out there who really don't know much. I mean, you go to 4 years of school, what do you really learn? Again, I'm not gonna get into this, but you can learn a lot if you really want to, I suppose, I went to college and I took agriculture, okay? This is 1969. Now, my teachers were very nice people. They were good people, but they refused. We brought up the word, this is 1969. My teachers had a thorn in their butt. And the thorn in the butt was that the year before, 1968, they had outlawed DDT. And these guys were bombed, man. DDT was the best killer for insects and especially for, what do you call them? Mosquitoes and so many things. Corn, weevils. DDT was number one. And now it's outlawed because the bald eagles were going extinct because it was somehow affecting the eggs and they were cracking prematurely, I think it was, or something like this. Anyway, so, me and this other guy, and his name was Tripp. In 1969, if your name was Tripp, that was, now it would be like, oh, no big deal. But 69, your name being Tripp was, Tripp. Like most people, the adults didn't even know what that meant. So, it's like, so me and Tripp brought up the idea, Professor, could we grow the vegetables organically? The guy goes, and the whole DDT comes to his head. You were all those DDT haters, And these guys were just, oh my God. And then they came down to they started realizing, well, we got to be careful here with these kids, we got to give them. So they said, okay, you guys grow organically over there, and we'll grow with the chemicals over here. Chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, chemical fungicides, and miticides. We'll do this and you do this. Okay, that's great. So they had brought all their fertilizers out and their tractors and their rototillers, and we're standing over there with nothing. They didn't give us any information. They didn't give us any fertilizer. I mean, I'm going, what the heck, you know? I mean, I really was interested in organic gardening and farming, you know? In fact, I made my life that. That's how I've been living my whole life. But these ding-dongs would not even give us a word. So we go down to the health food store. Back in those days, it was like a pill shop, right? And we're looking at the books down there. We find this book on organic gardening, you know? And it costs like, you know, $20 or something. I was like, you can fill for your car 4 times. 4 fill-ups for $20. I couldn't afford even to fill up my car, let alone do it 4 times to get a book that doesn't even go anywhere. So we go down there and read it in the freaking health food store, sitting on the ground, you know? Which in those days, there was no, it's not like now. Your health food store was a bunch of old people with canes coming in, you know, to get something, food, you know, mine, or something. It was not like now, you know. There was no avocado sprout sandwiches. There was no smoothies. There was nothing like that. So we started doing it, you know, and it grew and it grew and it grew, you know. So, I mean, in this world, it was a hassle. I still feel slighted by that, you know, to some degree. If those guys would have been more encouraging, they probably teach it organically now. Those guys are long gone anyway. They're not around the planet anymore, not on those bodies anyway. My point being, whatever your frustration is, whatever your problem is, and I've certainly had a lot of them in my life, you know, I turn to God, I turn to Krishna. And I call out his names, and this gives me relief. And simultaneously, on top of that, it pleases him. He remembers me. I want to be remembered by God. I want to be closer to God. I want to be in his presence and talk to him and be able to do things which are pleasing to him. So if my saying his names is pleasing to him, it's not that hard. In fact, in the beginning, maybe people, well, I have some people living with me right now. They didn't know anything about this, and they're from other parts of the world, and they like it. They just start. Oh, we've never done this before. This is nice. So it's very nice. Has so much benefit. So I'm encouraging people to take advantage of this. Huh? If you've watched this for the first time and you want to know more, that we have 5 other programs we've already put on the air that are on the same area, or you can tune in the future. There's plenty of places you can, opportunities you can get, that you can find out about this. So I encourage people to relate to God directly. And if in my life, what changed my course, the biggest point at the beginning was, first I thought I could become spiritual, on my own, which was a joke. And when I realized that was a joke and that I was a joke, and even trying, then I got a little bit more serious, and I cried out to God directly. I didn't call him by any particular name. I just called out to him to help me. I felt lost and I cried, and that was a huge turning point for me because he responded in so many ways. So, if a person is sincere, no matter where he might be, what his situation might be, God will respond. So thank you for your tuning in, and thank you for coming to be with me, and hope to see you soon. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hari Bol.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Gita Gaur, Hari Bol.
Rama
That's your
Rama,
problem. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Nityananda, Garuda, Nityananda.